Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Makenzie, and we're all excited to learn from your expertise about writing our life histories. Take it away.
Right. Of course, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here and talk about something that I really love doing and being part of. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll share my screen and we're going to put this in slideshow mode, presenter view. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, sounds
And
good.
we're good. It's all there.
All right, perfect. So to start off, my name's Makenzie Huber. My full-time job, I'm a politics and public policy reporter with South Dakota Searchlight. So we cover politics and public policy in South Dakota. But something that I came across and that I love to do dearly in my free time and outside of my full-time job is to write life stories. So that's celebration pieces, obituaries, full life stories for people and their loved ones. And so I came away with that from my experience as a journalist and writing and capturing people's stories and help people do that for their family as well. So what this is going to be for today is to sort of help you guys come away with an action plan to get started recording or writing your own life histories or someone that you love. So that'll be hopefully what you guys come away with, and I'll answer any questions at the end. So one of the I think your guys' homework that you were given before this was to fill out what I call the 5 questions exercise. So usually with my classes, I would have people take 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to go through these questions and to each question give 5 answers for each of these. So who are you? And then you would list 5 things. So for me, I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a journalist, I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm a gardener. We'll say that. So those would be 5 things that I would list. Um, there were some people who did fill it out. Would anybody be interested in sharing what they answered for one of these questions? If anybody did that, if you did, you can raise your hand or come off mute maybe. We'll just do one and then we don't have to take too much time, but you can share what you did. DJ, I can't see if anyone's raising their
I
hands.
don't think anyone is. So
Okay.
you can use one of the ones that was sent to you. Hopefully
Okay.
nobody minds. You can use anonymous names.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll pull it up. But one of the examples that I have, and I don't have to name names, but someone answered for their 5 questions for the what have you lived through? They said that they've lived through homelessness, their first husband's death, their son being in prison, another son not speaking to them, and their current husband's illness. So you can see that that's a lot of difference in what you've lived through, the experiences you've had. And each of these questions, they kind of overlap. But this whole exercise is to really get you thinking and ex kind of expressing and picking apart what it is about your life that is important to you. So even for the what have you lived through, when I've done these exercises in the past, a lot of people have referenced their personal experiences. Other people have talked about major natural disasters or national events, while other people have said that they've hit rock bottom with something that they lived through or where they've been. So it's really up to interpretation how you do it. But I highly encourage you to take 15 minutes to go through these questions after we're done here today and really just answer them because whenever you whenever I go through this, I like to at the end, after going through it and having people talk about what their answers are. At the end, I like to say, congratulations, you basically have the outline for your obituary, is what this is, because these are the things that you have identified that are important to you, about who makes you who you are, what you want people to remember about you for your obituary, and also what your loved ones care about as well, that they think would be important, as well. So yeah, once you finish that, you've got sort of the bones for a standard obituary, and then you just have to fill out some blanks for dates and names. But also, yeah, this is just it's a good setup as well for if you want to write something more, if you want to capture your story, or if you want to capture a loved one's story. Is it gives you sort of a template of what is important, the what happened, what you learned, and what you want people to remember. So um after that, this is just kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about today, is the difference between different sort of exercises, how to find a focus, ask questions, how to interview someone if you're hoping to do this for another person, writing and structuring, and then some other resources and tools that you can use as well. So to begin with this, I guess I put the difference up here between life histories, oral histories, memoirs, and these are just rough estimates of time that it would take to work on different projects. It can depend as well. But so oral histories, life histories is so that's where you take an interview with someone or a personal reflection and you write it into a flowing story that really incorporates different chunks of a person's life or different values that you want to highlight. So um, that can take anywhere from 18 to 41 hours in my personal experience, with how that is. And the more life histories you write, the faster it gets. So sometimes I can write some histories in, gosh, probably a day, so 8 hours. Um, Oral histories is at the Historical Society. You guys know what oral histories are. That is it's more professional. There's a lot of standards and rigor that go into it, and into the process, but it's all about preserving voices and stories. And so those are recordings and transcripts, and historical research. So um, there's that. And then memoirs, biographies. I'm sure everybody here has read some of those before. So those are the most time intensive projects that you could do. Um, and that takes a lot more work, but it's also work worth doing. So you can have something that is to the standard of A Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, which is a wonderful book, wonderful memoir. If anybody hasn't read it, I highly suggest it. But you could have something that is a little bit more manageable with it. It's a cookbook of recipes, and you talk with family members and you incorporate your memories of those recipes, or time with your family, their importance. And that is also something that can be published that is incredibly valuable, for your family, as someone who's done that project and loves it a lot, to have that in my family. So um, with all of these, it might sound a little intimidating to have numbers up on the screen like that of how long it might take. But if you just do half an hour a day to work on a prompt to answer a question, and just keep going at it, you can get something like this done within a year. It's incredibly, it is manageable for a lot of people. You just have to have to do it. That's if anything, that's the takeaway today is just do it. Um, so with this, we'll start with going through the project. I guess pre-interview is you want to find a focus and outline. That's probably the first thing that you want to do, aside from filling out those 5 answers, 6 questions worksheet, is find a focus, and know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing yet, if you're just having a general conversation with someone, and asking a bunch of questions, that works too. But just having a basic idea of where you can start. So you should collect basic information first if you're interviewing someone, collecting their information. So you get their birth date, where they were born, their living history, and their education history, and then their family names and the relationships that they had with them. So that doesn't seem very informative right away, but it really does tell you a lot. Or career history as well. I forgot to put that up here as well, but that's how people spend their lives, is they spend it in work, they spend it in the places they lived, and that can tell you a lot if they were in the military, if that was something that was important to them to live abroad, or if they changed where they lived, because where you live informs who you become as a person. It informs a lot of your values as well. So, and then once you understand what's important to them and what their general timeline is, you can start to build questions around that. So you can ask specifically about why they moved to 10 different places in 10 years. You can start asking about that, or you can sort of build more questions around it. Let's see. And then, so yeah, the interview phase is when you ask questions. So I think you guys will be provided with a list of 100 or so questions after this, of just general questions that you can ask your subject or yourself if you are doing a memoir, or recording your own life history, of just general prompts that you can talk to your subject about. And when you are interviewing them, make sure that, and when you're talking to yourself, writing for yourself, make sure that you ask follow-up questions. You ask why did you do that thing? Or why did your parents allow you to run around at midnight as a 10-year-old? Why do you think they let you do that? Why did you end up going out of state for college instead of staying in state? Or why is this important to you that you're recalling it decades later? Why is that memory itself important to you? Just I have a 3-year-old right now, and everything that all of our conversations are why? Just be my son. Just be a 3-year-old. And make sure that you take notes. Because taking notes when you do that, whether it's talking to someone or even just writing something down yourself, if you write something in the margins or you put a sticky note down, you want to make sure that you don't let those thoughts go away or those questions go away, or those little pieces of information. So you can also, if you're talking to someone and recording a conversation with them, having an interview where you talk to them and you have this conversation and ask them all these questions, then you can timestamp it. You can write down what the memorable sections are from the recording, and you can retain that for when you write it later, so you know what stuck out to you. Or you can also flag items for accuracy checks later on, to make sure that you know how to spell someone's name, or check and see if something might not be actually factually accurate. You have to check with another family member maybe, or you have to make sure that they are remembering something accurately about a national event. So that would be good for when you're doing that. All the other tips, check your technology, make sure that it's recording. If you're recording something, make sure that if you're using your phone, it's on airplane mode. Because if you get a call or something happens, it might disconnect and you might stop recording. Make eye contact, actively listen, nod your head, smile, like actually know what they're talking about. But don't laugh at their jokes out loud. Don't interrupt or interject, especially if you're talking to someone who's older. They might take a long time to respond. They might be thinking through their sentences, or they might be recalling or remembering. And silence is a good thing when it comes to that. It's not a bad thing. They're taking that time and you're allowing them that space to remember. And so there's just no need to rush there. And if you interrupt or you interject, you might distract them. They might not remember what they were trying to think. And if you laugh or you interrupt, that also messes up the audio. If that's something that's important to you, or the people that you're preserving this for, is to have that audio. So yeah. And then what else did I have about? Oh yeah, and ask follow-up questions. So I guess this is what I included here are some examples of I did a pre-write obituary for a client a little while ago. And I just, because I was preparing for this, I thought I should make sure and see what I considered follow-up questions in this interview that stuck out to me, and how I conducted this. So it was I was writing an obituary for a woman who doesn't have children, and she wanted me to prepare this for her because she doesn't like to write, and she didn't know where to start with her own obituary, and her husband also did not want to write the obituary either, so they asked me to do it. And so what I asked is, so she told me the story about her husband, and she told me sort of why she married him. And so I asked how they met. I asked how exactly did they fall in love? How did she know that she was falling in love with him, or why he was the right person for her? She said that she met him at the right moment in her life. Can you talk to me about why? What do you mean by that? What is the right moment? How did you even sense that at the time, or did that come on later in your reflection? She also mentioned during that obituary conversation a lot of places that she's volunteered after she retired. So I asked her to talk to me about each of the organizations and why they mattered to her, why it was important that she give back. And that led to a really, really good exploration of what her values are, and what's important to her and her own past experience, because she volunteers with a domestic abuse shelter in town. And so it was something where she explored with me her history of being a survivor of domestic abuse, but also what she gained from that experience and what she wanted others to learn, and why she really provided that time and volunteerism there, for the people who went through it. So she also talked about being a caregiver, why that was important for her to care for her mom and her sister at the end of their lives, what she learned from those experiences. And then I asked her I had the question of, what do you want people to remember about you? And she said that she spoke up even when her voice shakes. So that was something where I asked her to elaborate on that. And that was something where we explored more of her values, and really dug deeper into that. So that is something where you can, when you interview people or when you are writing something yourself, really just dig in. Ask yourself why, ask yourself how, Just really force yourself to explore the things that you wrote, and the reasons or the values, the beliefs that those are built around, because that's what makes you who you are. Um, and then next is post-interview phase. So that's usually the hardest part for a lot of people. Is this is the part where you're figuring out, how do I write this? And this you can stop here if that is something that you do not have a strength in, you do not enjoy it. If it's something that you just don't want to do, you've done you've done the most important work. You have asked the questions, you have recorded the answers, you have written things down, where if you have a loved one who comes across it who wants that information, that's a treasure trove. That's incredibly valuable to just have those answers, even if it's just an audio format of someone answering a question. That's actually what I'm doing. I volunteer with Lutheran Social Services as a companion for an older adult here in Sioux Falls. I'm based in Sioux Falls, and that's something that we do together. Is every time I see her, I ask her a few questions about her childhood. I ask her most recently. I asked her what it was like being a young girl during the Great Depression, and she just talked for 10 minutes about what it was like, how they put wet rags underneath the windowsills to keep the dust from coming in. And that was something. I sent it to her son who lives in California. It's just a memo that was on my phone, and I sent it over. So he has it, and he's just collecting this little pieces of information that I'm talking with her about, and that he'll record with her as well when they're together. Where that's enough. That's enough for him to have her tell those stories, and for him to look back on it. If he ever wants to write something or compile that all into a project, he can. But otherwise, right now, he's happy with this information, and having that. So yeah, for the post interview, if you do want to create this as a larger project, which most of you are here for to do that, is really to to reflect on the conversation that you had, or reflect on your writing, and to pick out major themes that came up when you were going through this, or to separate it by natural chunks of someone's life or their story. And when you do this, when you chunk it out, childhood to college, to their love life and finding their life partner, to adulthood, career, different values, whether that's gardening, or whether that's a certain faith. Those are pieces of their lives that sort of fit into a puzzle, that make up sort of them. And you can use that as the natural subsections or chapters. So it's just identifying what those chunks are, and that will help you sort of organize your thoughts for the later writing phase. So with that, here's an example that I have that I did. Frank Peterite, he was a well-known radiologist in Sioux Falls, and he was a wonderful man. He was very kind, very fun to be around. And a few years ago, I met him and I asked him if he wanted to share his life story with me because I liked being around him and I wanted to do something for him. So what we did is I did an interview with him. It was about it was based on the 100 questions that you guys will get later. I just asked him all of those questions and I asked follow-ups, and the interview we chunked it out and it was about three hours worth of interviewing. And from that, I was able to give the audio recording to his family as well as the transcript. And I also wrote a life story as well, where I sort of streamlined is not a good word for this, but I sort of condensed the biggest parts of what we talked about that were most important to him and that he wanted included in his story into about it was like 2,000 word profile is how I would probably describe it, given that I write profiles for a living in journalism. But so this is and how we did it was the headline for lack of a better term was challenges turned to lessons is what his biggest takeaway from our conversation was. And so how I structured it, you can see I started with the introduction, and what I did was what was in my conversation with him, we realized that a lot of what he wanted to get across um, about himself and to share with his family was how there were a lot of things that could have set him on a worse path in life. He could have handled it differently, and he wouldn't have been the man that he was today. Um, and the biggest thing that stuck with him, and that really set up the rest of his life was his father's death. He saw his father drown in a river when he was a young boy. He couldn't swim himself, so he couldn't go out and save him. He was only 5. His father was a German immigrant. His mother was a German immigrant. So his death really it left a mark on him, but it also sort of set into motion the rest of challenges that he would face because his mother was a German immigrant. She was a single mother. They were poor. She couldn't work very, very well paying jobs. He had to find ways to support her at a young age. That made him grow up faster, but it also made him a little bit more resentful. Also, because he came from German immigrants, he didn't know English when he started school. So he also had a really difficult time starting school. So he became frustrated, he became rebellious, and because of that, he had to go into an orphanage later on in life. And that's where a rough childhood, a path that set him straight, was that orphanage and finding mentors there. That really helped him figure out how to live life. Then planting the seed, that was something where his mom just said that she should become a doctor after he had an accident as a kid, and it really did plant a seed for him of this is something I want to do. It wasn't something that he was able to accomplish until later in life because of all the things that sort of set him back. He became a non-traditional student later on in life, but he was able to finally accomplish that. And then I focused on his love story with his wife, how they started a family together, and how that life and work balance played into the time period he was in. And then also I ended on finding faith. It was something that he found later in life, but something that was incredibly valuable to him, and that was most important to him at the time of his passing. So that's an example of Frank's story and how I structured that. Those were just sort of the natural breaks that I saw when I was writing this. And when when you're doing this, when you want to write a story, you can find those natural themes. But I think it's also very helpful up in this right-hand corner, is to think about the audience that you're writing this for. In this case, it was Frank's family and Frank himself. The reason that this is being written or recorded is for him, it was to really capture who he was and what his life journey was, and to share that with his family so they had something to remember about it. And then the message that you want communicated here, or your subject, your client wants communicated here, your loved one is in, and in Frank's case, it was that self-determination, hard work, and support from mentors and people that he identified as family later on in his life helped him succeed. So that was, those are some guiding principles when you think about writing. And it's what I use in my everyday career as well, as I always think of the audience, the message, what the takeaway is, and finding the focus for a story. And then that helps me understand how to write a particular story as well. And then I guess this is mine. I have not written a memoir. I, like I said, I have a 3-year-old son. I don't have the time right now. But this is, if I were to write something, this is probably where I would start. My audience, I'm unknown, but probably for just my family. The reason that I would write it is just to share my personal journey, and what I went through, and then the message, what I would tell him, is that love, self-love, and for people around you are really the most important things and all that you have. I don't know if anyone else here has gone through a cancer journey, but if you ever have, or if you do, it's really a wake-up call. For me, it was right after I graduated college. It was actually 2 weeks after I got my first job. So luckily I had health insurance. And so that was nice. But with that was sort of an early experience that has informed how I live my life since then. And so if I were to write a memoir, I would probably start out a story, um, sort of with a pivotal moment that sets the stage for everything to come. That's very vague, but it's probably what I would start with. Either maybe finding out when I was pregnant, when I wasn't supposed to be able to have children. I had never wanted children, but once I had the opportunity, it was life changing. Or maybe holding my son for the first time. That would maybe be something about how I would start a story, because it really sets the idea of where this is going, about what is important to me and how it informs the rest of the story. Um, After that, I would probably go into family dynamics when I was in a child, or in my teen years, just about how they shaped my perception of life, and self-worth. I grew up in a family where it was very much work, 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 find success, get to the top of the ladder, make money to be comfortable, and the warm fuzzy stuff comes afterward. You can settle down later in life, and when you have cancer, that shakes everything up, and you realize that is not guaranteed. And prioritizing relationships is where I really wanted to focus. It was also something where, after I had gone through that experience, and not being able to have a child, having really short hair, not being having surgery and scars, having to really process that myself and finding my own self-worth there. Then I would probably go into my journey finding my life partner, my husband, and how we were not expecting to have a child, and then we ended up having a child because that tends to happen as doctors tell you that you will never be able to conceive after going through treatment, and then something happened. So he was our miracle baby, and that journey going through that has changed my life. So basically now, the end section would probably be talking about how I balance motherhood and survivorship, um, and really kind of grapple with the idea that I probably um, will not get to see my husband retire from work or see my son get married. So because cancer treatment and chemo, likely to develop cancer later on in life. So I have not touched that memoir because I personally am not ready for it. But that would probably be how I would write that. So, um, when you do write, just know it really doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, if you're just writing based off of prompts that I give you, questions, you just write. And if that is the finished product, is sort of a diary entry style book, that's wonderful. That is really incredible to have that. But I mean, with this, you do not have to write the perfect opening to your story to let it be your story. You just need to be there, let it be you. So with this, I would I would encourage you to really put a lot of time and effort into the outlining, the reflection, because when you identify those themes and you identify what the pieces are that are most important to you, the rest will come naturally. And you don't have to have the perfect sentence. You don't have to have a flowery structure, especially when you're writing a memoir from your own words, or if you're writing a life history for a loved one, you don't want it to be something that isn't in your own words, that doesn't reflect how you actually talk. Um, so when you do that, and especially with life histories of someone else, I try very hard to keep the writing style as they spoke it, as they explained something themselves. Because I want to make sure that I'm staying as true as I can, to what how they speak and how they communicate. Because that's really important, go when people read that. So um, there's that. And then let's see. Yeah, write it like you say it. But also when writing, I would highly encourage you to, and this is what I do for my personal job as well, is after I finish a story, or when I'm talking about a story that I want to do, or after a meeting that I just had, I will call my editor or I will call a coworker and I will tell them, "Hey, this is what happened at this meeting, and this is the wild thing that I think people should know about." And the way that I explain it is the natural flow of how I tell a story and what I think is most engaging or most important that I want to communicate. So I really encourage you, if you're writing a chapter or if you're writing a story, to tell someone before you start writing even, so that way you get an understanding of what how you would tell it, but that way you can also know what's most important, what's the most interesting thing that you think grabs people's attention, that you would keep people engaged. So with that, put the most important interesting information at the top, That's journalistic writing, that's creative writing. Do something that pulls your reader in, whether that's a narrative, whether that's factual, whether that's giving a chronological account. It really depends on what you are writing and how you tell stories. Like I said, this does not have to be some professional, really beautiful, flowery story. This is just you and your story. So you want to stay true to that. Um, yep. Before you write, establish what you're writing, what your message is, who your audience is. Um, and then, yeah, split into life chunks and fit the information in like a piece of a puzzle. So. And then publishing, finding the best way to share something. That could be publishing a book. It could be printing out a Word document, binding it yourself, stapling it, putting it in a folder. It could be keeping it on the internet or an audio file. Um, it can be whatever works for you, whatever is affordable to you, and whatever you want to use. I know people who have taken things that I've written and they have self-published it, and they have this fancy, nice little book that they keep for their family, or they printed off several for different kids in the family to keep in their own nuclear families of their grandparents' story. And I know other people who just keep the transcript, keep the audio file, and keep the life history online, and that's how they keep it. But if you do want to publish, I would encourage you to gather photos and memorabilia. So letters, artwork, any newspaper clippings that you remember. Frank is a good example. Frank was always he was always talking to the media because he wanted to be featured in the paper. So he showed me all of the newspaper clippings of when he was, I think he was featured in the Argus Leader when he was, I think he was 92 at that point, and he still skied at Great Bear. He would go down the big hill and he still skied. And I think the story was that like he was the oldest person still to ski at Great Bear, and he did it weekly. And so he had the little newspaper clipping, and so I put it in with his story because that was something that he loved to show me every time I would come over, as he was really proud of sort of how much of a celebrity he was. So yeah, scan those photos, download them. And if you don't have a scanner yourself, libraries, they have scanners. Librarians are wonderful to work with, and will help you if you need that. Canva is my preferred software right now. It's a internet-based tool, very user-friendly. If you're not familiar with Photoshop or InDesign or other sort of the Adobe Cloud Suite, is Canva is really easy to use, and they have templates. So I would encourage you, if you want to create something a little bit more polished, to use Canva. And then if you want to publish something, there's a lot of options. If you want sort of like a small printing, you can print off through Canva. If you want something a little bigger, that you want to print a lot of copies of, self-publish, you can do Kindle publishing. That would work as well. And I have a past client, they had a memoir of their mother that they went through and they published, and they printed, I don't know if it was 200 or 500 copies just of their mother's story, and it was a wonderful memoir, and piece that they had written, book that they had written about their mother, and they put it in different shops around the state, and people who were interested in frontier, the story of a frontier woman, and how she was raised and how she lived, and what made her the woman that she was, they bought it. And so they had a little bit of an income from that as well. And then other resources. SDSU Extension has workshops kind of like this, similar to this. And I would encourage you to look into SDSU Extension and their classes that they offer. They have virtual classes. There's the South Dakota Oral History Center. And then I guess I would also recommend that you find people. Maybe some people on this chat, you live near each other, you want to sort of start a club for writing. That's what a lot of the people at nursing homes that I've spoken to and I've led classes on, that's something that they've taken away and that they started. I believe maybe Ben's mother was part of these writing clubs after I talked to them, where they get together on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and they talk about their stories, or they come up with other prompts that they can all write to and that they can remember to, or they share their projects and ask for feedback, or they read chapters with each other. So that is something that I would encourage you to do if you are interested, if you are serious about this, is having that system where it's a community that you can talk to other people, but also they can hold you accountable. You have to write so many chapters a month, or something to that degree. So that's my presentation. So 45 minutes.
See, that was terrific. And thank you for your vulnerability in telling us your own very touching story. I
I
think,
was not expecting to cry, so sorry about
well,
that.
yeah, I think a lot of us could say we weren't expecting that you would have us crying. But that's what we're talking about with life stories, right? And that's what you've asked the follow-up questions where you get to the things that make you cry. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's a great question from Janet about video. So she says she's a storyteller and better at that than writing, and my screen just went away. Uh, yeah, okay. So how would you work at this process through video instead of writing?
I
With
would, yeah, I would, if, I guess, Janet, is it video as in you're interviewing a subject and you're using the video that you can put together, or is it you are creating a video documentary of your own story, or I guess just for further clarification of what your project is, Janet? I
speak
don't
to
know if
both
she
of
can get
those, Mackenzie.
unmuted.
Maybe like if you're making a video documentary, or using video maybe instead of
Yeah, I would,
audio.
yeah, I've done this as well. This was one of the projects that I did in college, was we did video as well. And with that, I would just take the video that you have, either of you yourself talking, or the interview, or the loved one that you have talking, and use that where you have them sitting down and telling the story, and clipping it that way. Or you can have yourself asking the questions, and then you can use B-roll of photos or family videos, or of National Archive videos of periods that help illustrate what it was like of that time period that they're talking about. So you can use that just raw footage of them talking, but you can also use it in a way that helps communicate that, if that
Janet
makes
has
sense.
put in a little explanation. So Janet says she's creating a video documentary of her own stories.
Okay.
So interviewing herself.
I love that. I think that's really fun because, yeah, you can do it in a way where you are talking to the camera as like a personal diary. I think that would be so interesting to have you just recall something and to do that, as opposed to you could do something where it's a documentary without you talking. That would be a lot harder, without you explaining your own, and answering these questions. But I think that would be really cool to do sort of a video diary, um, piece. You're not muted anymore if you want to talk, Janet.
I just say just quickly, what I was thinking about doing instead of putting things into chapters, like chapters of one's life, chapters of this what journey, this whatever, is that I would make videos of each of those chapters
Mhm.
and tell the stories. And part of my reason for doing that is that the telling of these stories, which my kids have heard many times over, whatever, but it's really my humor, and it's really my what I mean, different than writing. When you just say this was crazy, right, is different than saying typing this was crazy.
Yeah, and that's yeah. I
Yeah,
love that because it when you do video, you have the way that you say something, or you have your facial expressions, or the way that you talk with your hands everywhere. It really gives you a different perspective where if you are not writing in a way that clearly communicates sort of or follows how you do talk, that gets lost. Where yeah, video, the audio recordings, like I said, audio, those are a great way to preserve life histories as
and
well.
I was just thinking about quick player, I mean, I could just put each chapter on quick player, and then it's just the idea of how do you put them all together in something that's a flash drive or whatever.
Yeah, and that's where it's saying like if you wanted something where it wasn't just video diaries, but you wanted something where you still needed to sort of rewrite and talk over yourself and provide B-roll. You could do that where you have pictures and you explain, and that way it's a little bit more, it might be a little bit more composed as opposed to just telling a story.
Right, right,
So
right.
yeah, there are a lot of ways that you can do it.
But mostly, I would just have to say, getting started seems to be. I mean, I've had this little project on my dining room table now for, I don't know, 3 months.
Mhm.
I haven't quite
Just get
got
started. Just do it.
started. So, okay.
Having the raw material and having those interviews are the most important pieces.
Right,
So like
right,
get started.
right.
Um,
Or can I hire you to do it? Can people hire you to do it?
yes, yes, that's something I forget to mention. But yeah, you can hire me to do something if you want to do that as well. So I think doing it, I still believe that doing it with a family member, so that it's a meaningful bonding experience is the best way to do it, especially if you have someone who wants to do it, who wants to do this project with you. But if you don't, yep, you can hire me is what you can do. Did anybody else have any questions?
Some helpful information going on in the chat. So some links to Canva, for example, and there's a free version of Canva, and then to get the better stuff, you have to pay for it. But the free stuff is basic, and it's okay. So, and also that Amazon has self-publishing as well for larger distribution, and also there's on Ancestor. No, I know. Sorry, Catherine has a link on here for SDSU extension, and they have it's called Creative Life Writing Workshop, Ancestor Writing.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like that. And there are programs. One's called Camtasia, where you can record. I've used it for making online courses, and then you can add in scans, videos, all kinds of things, and kind of cut and paste your audio files as well. So there are things out there that can allow you to put together your own auto documentary. Is that a word? Did I just make it up?
Yeah, there
Okay.
are a lot of resources out
We
there.
have some new comments here. Okay. How about when writing about older relatives, how much research on background of the time period is really a good idea? How much research do you do?
Um, it depends on how much you want. It depends for your audience if that is something that is important to you to have all of that. But when
Text,
I
basically. Yeah.
yeah, context where where when I'm doing these life histories, the focus is on that person. And a lot of the questions you'll also see when do they have those questions sent out later on, or when the 100 or so questions that I sent to you?
Um, yeah, I think we'll send those like we did the questions earlier today as the
Okay,
reminders.
sounds good. But with that, like that will you can ask in a way where you get the context of the economic, the societal, the cultural, the political factors that really influenced that person. Because you can have something that is of that time that impacts someone in New York that completely impacted someone differently in South Dakota. You can have something where cultural impacts of that time, Sioux Falls versus rural South Dakota. And it's really, I don't think that you should, I think in my personal experience, I do research to make sure that the information that they share is historically accurate. I will do the research by checking historical sources. I will do the research by talking to other family members, or other people who are alive at that time. Um, but I still put a lot of weight into what they personally experienced because it is still their story. So they can tell you what it was like growing up in the Great Depression, the food that they ate, what it was like to live in town versus on a farmhouse, what it was like to see what what their parents went through, and their own experiences, because that's most important. And then you can just check to make sure that it is historically accurate after hearing their version. So
Last question. How do you deal with unpleasant events that are conveyed to you, and maybe your own, or I mean, you gave us an example of that, which your cancer, right? The
yeah.
unpleasant event, but when you're interviewing someone, and how do you do follow up with that, I guess?
Well, I guess when I am a journalist first and foremost. So I recognize that unpleasant experiences are a part of life and they help inform us. And so when I talk with people, I do communicate and I ask, what are the challenges that you experience, or what were some life events that weren't enjoyable, but really informed who you learn to become. And sometimes they want to explore that. When it comes to the client that I talked to, she shared about her domestic abuse situation and how that informed who she became later on. She didn't, in the obituary that we talked about, she didn't want to include that publicly in her obituary, but it is something that she found value in and kept for herself, just because she enjoyed reflecting on that. And with other women that I've talked to, miscarriages, for example, are really, really hard. And a lot of women go through miscarriages, especially older generations. And that might be something they want to talk about. It might not be. My father too, he went through a divorce. And I was doing his life history, and talking about how his divorce and having a child, my half sister, and there was a lot of stuff where he just straight up on the record said, I can't talk about this. I want to make sure that I have a good memory of this, and that my daughter, my half sister, has the memories that I have that are good, and I don't want to taint that with bad memories. So it's really just talking um, to the person that you are interviewing, reflecting yourself, and determining what the value is of those pieces of information. Was it something that you want to be remembered? Or is it something that you think is better off not being touched? I think I saw someone raise their hand somewhere, if
It's
anybody.
Alan. Go ahead, Alan, but we're already after 8, so we're going to keep it brief.
Okay, very quickly, I'm the person who asked that question about unpleasant events because I'm writing my family history, and the people of those unpleasant events are long deceased. My grandfather, when I was doing research, the the 1920 census listed my grandmother as head of household. My grandfather was nowhere mentioned, and I had to search long and hard for him and found him as an inmate of the state hospital in Yankton, undergoing psychiatric treatment. So I wrote away, and amazingly, they sent me all of the psychiatric notes that were taken for his treatment. And he had two brothers who were also there, one of whom the family released without the recommendation of the doctors, and he committed suicide. So there's all of that kind of stuff. And some family members know about it, others do not know about it. On the one hand, I don't want to make too much of it, but on the other hand, I don't particularly want to make that completely silent. So that's my dilemma in that particular event.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say, yeah, just talk to your family if this is for your family, if they consider it valuable, or if they don't. That is something that with my family, there's bipolar in my family, bipolar disorder, and that's something where when it comes to the family members, my grandparents and my dad that I've talked to, that is something where they thought that it was important, and members of our family thought it was important to share their personal experiences with bipolar disorder. So that way, because it is genetic, that way people understand what they went through, and what the implications could be for them. So if it's valuable for you, if it's valuable for your family, these family members are long deceased, so it's kind of up to you, really, if you think that it's worth telling and sharing. So
All right, I'm going to bring this to a close. I hope everybody's inspired to, as soon as you get off this program, to start writing down or answering questions or asking questions. This has been such a great program. Thank you so much, Makenzie. And you heard her say that she is available for hire, but there's also South Dakota State University Extension. If you need to do a